Yeah, good evening to everyone and good morning to everyone also around the world. Thanks so much for joining. We're very excited to kick off this Ideathon with Cartesi and IoTeX today. As some of you may have already seen last week, we announced our partnership between Cartesi and IoTeX, which is something that we've been very fortunate to have a lot of conversation with Cartesi team back and forth about what this partnership could really look like, what it could really enable for the Web3 community. And today we're excited to bring you guys into that discussion about what type of use cases Cartesi and IoTeX can really fuel going forward. So that's really the point of this hackathon, is to explore this new design space with verifiable data and verifiable compute, which we believe will change a lot of things for the way that these DApps are developed and what they can ultimately do. So I'm joined today by Natalie and Bruno from the Cartesi team. Hey guys, you want to say hi?
Sure. Yeah. I'm head of marketing at Cartesi and organizing, or actually co-organizing the event. And I'm here because I live in the Netherlands and I have strong ties with the Dutch Blockchain Week.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie. And Bruno.
Hi guys, I'm Bruno, head of business development in Cartesi. It's a pleasure to be here today. It's even more pleasure to kickstart this great partnership with IoTeX. As Larry mentioned, we have been discussing for a while how that cooperation between our two companies will really reshape the industry on IoT. And the idea of this Ideathon today is share with the community concepts, motivate and inspire our communities to bring to us innovative ideas to make the impossible possible. Really excited to see what's going to unfold this week.
Definitely. Well said. Well said. We're very excited to just explore all the different options, right? So the way that this session is going to work, we're first going to provide some context on the projects today. So I'm going to give a short overview of IoTeX. Bruno is going to give a short overview of Cartesi, just to lay the groundwork about what our projects are independently trying to achieve. And what we'll do after that is we'll talk about what the combination of our two technologies can really enable. And the really exciting part is what our two projects can enable together is very much limitless in a lot of different ways, right? So we want to give you guys the opportunity to ideate in this new design space and come up with your own ideas. And there's going to be some great prizes. All the participants will get an NFT for participating in this Ideathon, and it's great bragging rights for everyone going forward. So yeah, after we share the goals of the partnership and some of the use cases that we have in mind, we are going to be sharing the overview of the Ideathon at the end, which we try to simplify for everyone. We're going to be running this over the course of this week. So you'll have a few days to come up with some ideas, and we'll share exactly how you can submit and join the Ideathon at the end. But yeah, just to kick things off, I'm going to give a short presentation about IoTeX. For those that are new to IoTeX, it'd be a good way to basically, just understand the unique kind of scope that we're tackling. And also, then I'm going to pass it over to Bruno to chat about Cartesi and the partnership. So why don't I get that started right now? So here's my presentation today. Great. So IoTeX is has a vision for what we call the Internet of Trusted Things. For those that don't know, IoTeX has been around since 2017, building through the bear market and popping out on this side with at a very interesting time for blockchain, right? When people are starting to think outside of the DeFi space about what blockchain can enable. We're already seeing this with NFTs, with DAOs, and we really think that real world devices and real world data is going to be the next big thing for blockchain. So at the core of what IoTeX is, we are a smart contract platform, layer 1, EVM compatible, and where we seek to build the connected world. So we're a blockchain and IoT platform that is fueling the future of Web3. And, a lot of people ask us what the goal of IoTeX is. One of the best ways to explain it is we know for a fact that machines, especially intelligent machines, will be a big part of our world's future workforce, covering all different types of industries, providing data, providing services. If you've seen like the Boston Dynamics robots or any of these intelligent automated machines, autonomous vehicles, windmills, etc., it's very clear that autonomous machines are going to generate a lot of work for the future. McKinsey estimates that by 2030, there will be over 100 billion machines in the world, outnumbering humans by 10 to 1. And these machines will generate up to $12.6 trillion in value with a T, right? So if we know these predictions to be even close to accurate, we really need to ask ourselves, who's going to own these 100 billion machines and who's going to benefit from this $12.6 trillion in value, right? And IoTeX and much of the Web3 world believes that this ownership and control and value should be delivered to everyday people and businesses, not omnipotent corporations, as is the case with Web 2. So that's really the driving force behind what IoTeX is about. We have a big belief that these intelligent machines will be the biggest users of blockchains in the future, using blockchain as a trust mechanism to communicate with each other, to exchange value with each other. And if you know the saying that data is new gold, we think IoT devices are going to be the gold mines in this new future. So we've built this platform from scratch, ultimately to use blockchain to connect trusted machines and real world data to decentralized applications. And IoTeX is a fast, low fee, secure platform that caters to MachineFi, DeFi, and GameFi apps. Here's a high level overview of the platform. As I mentioned, we're a layer 1 blockchain, EVM compatible, built completely from scratch. So we didn't fork any code. And our real goal is to enable trusted data from trusted devices for use in trusted dApps. And we'll get into a lot more detail about how this trusted data from these trusted devices will be paired with Cartesi's off-chain computing environment to calculate insights that will trigger different responses in dApps. So once we get a better understanding of this design space, it's going to really allow you to come up with some really, really cool use cases. So at the bottom of IoTeX, we have our layer 1 blockchain. It's cheap, it's fast, it's decentralized, just like all the other layer 1s out there. But really what differentiates IoTeX, we have a big focus on IoT-oriented middleware and different types of sub-protocols that enable this to happen, trusted data from trusted devices for trusted dApps. That includes, of course, the smart contracts, the EVM. We have a data oracle called TrueStream that will grab data directly from machines. When compared to things like Chainlink, those are grabbing data from historical databases. And we'll cover a little bit what the difference is and how they can be ultimately combined and complement each other. Another big piece of what IoTeX does is on the decentralized identity space. We have a spec for human and machine identity for these to interoperate and exchange value and communicate via the blockchain. And finally, we have a lot of cross-chain bridges to Binance Smart Chain, Ethereum, Polygon, that ultimately we see as interoperability. If IoTeX is the hub for IoT data, we want to spread the love to other chains in the future. We also have a lot of different toolkits, wallet, explorer, SDKs, a device registration portal that's launching very soon, a Web3 socket, so you can use MetaMask and Remix and Truffle and all of your favorite EVM-based tools directly on IoTeX just by setting a new RPC endpoint. And like I mentioned, IoTeX is catering to a lot of different type of dApps. There's DeFi going on IoTeX. There's a lot of GameFi going on IoTeX, but something that's very unique to IoTeX is this concept of MachineFi, grabbing data and intelligence from machines and ultimately allowing people to monetize their machine resources and machine intelligence. Our ecosystem is growing. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but even some of these numbers are out of date. We have about 10,000 plus devices, 50,000 plus staking users and 100K plus monthly active users of our wallets. A lot of folks from different countries, a lot of assets on chain, over 50 dApps on IoTeX, and this number is definitely growing by the week. And something you should also know about IoTeX, we're a very, very big part of a lot of industry consortiums, such as the IEEE, IIC, MOBI, and Confidential Computing Consortium. Just a very, very high level overview of our ecosystem. As I mentioned, there's a lot of different DApps out there. And the most exciting part is a lot of these DApps are going to really want to utilize the combination of IoTeX and Cartesi going forward. It's not just for MachineFi, but the rich analytics that we can gather from Cartesi's off-chain compute environment has a place across the board here. So it's very exciting. One really important thing to know is that IoTeX already powers real-world devices, and these are things you can feel and you can touch. I have two of them right in front of me today. One of them is called UCam. It's a security camera that we built alongside an enterprise camera manufacturer called Tenvis, and it's the first camera that allows you to own and control your videos. So you have exclusive ownership over all of the videos that your camera captures. It won the CES Innovation Award in 2020, and it uses a your keys, your data model, basically using your private key to end-to-end encrypt all of your videos. So only you are able to decrypt and view your videos. So it's very much a privacy camera, but above and beyond privacy is an own your data camera, right? Once you own your data, you can choose to keep it private. You can choose to share it. You can choose to monetize it. You can do whatever you want with it as your property. So this is a very new paradigm for the way that smart devices are run. The other machine that we power currently is Pebble Tracker, which is going to be a big theme of our Ideathon. It's the first device that really brings verifiable real-time data from the device to smart contracts and DApps. So this device here has GPS, temperature, humidity, air quality, air pressure, motion, vibration, and light sensors. And it signs this data as it's captured for authenticity and ownership. And most importantly, it makes it available to DApps via a subgraph, very easy to ingest. And we have a big group of developers already backing the product, really looking forward to shipping it into the people's hands by the end of this month. And finally, we're working on a lot of things with Raspberry Pi and Arduino and other universal dev boards. So IoTeX has really created this infrastructure, enable other devices to perform like UCam and like Pebble Tracker. But if you guys are interested in the hardware piece at all, definitely check out these two products, and we'd be happy to chat more about what you would like to build with them. Important piece of what IoTeX is meant to do, and I think this is worth taking a little bit of time to just explain, is we have this concept called proof of anything. We think it's a new paradigm for the way that DApps can view proofs, right? Everyone in the crypto space knows about proof of work and proof of stake, right? I often feel this is misconstrued as consensus mechanisms, which they are, right? But more so than that, these are literal proofs that you are providing to the blockchain in order to get a permission, a benefit, or a reward, right? For proof of work, if you solve this computationally intensive puzzle that Bitcoin issues, the Bitcoin protocol issues, then you receive the ability to be a validator and mint the next block and earn a Bitcoin, right? If you stake 32 ETH, then you become a validator, right? This is a proof of your stake to the Ethereum blockchain. So these are literal proofs that entities are providing to the blockchain in order to get a benefit or a reward. So what IoTeX really thinks about is, what if these proofs don't have to be something digital or stake related or work related? What if it could be something we've done in the real world, whether it's, hey, I ran 5 miles, or I lost 5 pounds, or I drove this environmentally friendly route to work, or anything, right? If we are able to prove our real world actions verifiably to the blockchain, then we can trigger any number of responses. So this concept of proof of anything, a great example that Pebble Tracker enables is proof of presence, right? If you're able to prove to the blockchain that you or an asset were at a specific place at a specific time, this information can be used to trigger an NFT to be minted, a payment to be settled, a notification to be sent, a workflow to be kicked off. But just like, bringing price feeds from Chainlink to the chain, the importance of the verifiability and trustworthiness of this data, if we're going to be building new economies on top of this single version of the truth, then the single version of the truth has to be verifiable to everyone, right? So This is where the IoTeX tech stack really comes into play, right? From the hardware piece to the Oracle piece to the decentralized identity piece, all of these layers have an important role in what we call this proof of anything concept, right? Secure hardware is the one that collects the data and signs the data. The Oracle is the one that translates this data into a blockchain-ready language. Decentralized identity allows this data to be owned by a device or a human exclusively. And finally, the dApps and the smart contracts can use these data proofs in order to generate reactions in the real world. This is an important piece of what machines can provide to the blockchain, right? It's the arbiter of truth. It's a brand new data source that blockchains can utilize to create these incentive structures and create these dApps. And this is where our concept of MachineFi comes from. MachineFi is really about how do we use the billions of devices around the world, not only to prove things that humans have done, whether it's a wearable device that tells your health or your vehicle, but in the future, intelligent machines with their own identities that are autonomous are going to be proving things to other machines and to the blockchain to get benefits. And this is really where autonomous organizations will really sprout and come from. So that's a high-level overview of IoTeX. Let me explain a little bit more when it comes to how Cartesi, really fits in and creates a perfect complement to this verifiable real-world data that IoTeX has. But for now, I'm going to pass it over to Bruno to share more about Cartesi. Bruno, I'm going to make you the host here.
Yep.
Great.
Thanks, Larry. Let's share the screen. Let me know, guys. Slideshow.
Great, we can see it.
Oh, thanks for the great intro, Larry. I think once we start talking about Cartesi, will make sense, a lot of sense, people, why our both companies are partnering up. And we have a lot of synergies and the common passion on how blockchain is reshaping the world into a new reality and giving a new chance to people making the right distribution of wealth that the Web 2.0 unfortunately failed. So, well, what is Cartesi? Put in short, Cartesi is the blockchain OS. We are bringing to the blockchains an entire operating system, and this is a game changing on the things that will unlock having the operating system to the blockchains. We believe that having this home, the developers, mainstream developers that are mostly aside of this revolution, will have a comfortable and very known and rich environment to develop smart contracts and solutions that are not yet possible to be implemented on the program languages available for the smart contracts. But Cartesi is more than that. We do not only provide this blockchain OS, but we're providing that, augmenting the capacity of the existing blockchains, increasing the computation scalability and other scalability factors to really reach the new level, the level that we need to be in order to address all the opportunities that this blue ocean of blockchain revolution is bringing to us. So doing that, we are future-proof as well. We are paving the way toward the new apps and new generation of applications being implemented, at what is impossible right now starting to be possible. And we're going to see that today with some examples that we prepare on how people could work together in Cartesi and IoTeX infrastructure. Well, so we are not a blockchain. We are actually an infrastructure that sits on top of the blockchains to augment the capacity of blockchains. Cartesi itself is blockchain agnostic. We position ourselves as layer 2 or even layer 3 technology, and we act complementary to the blockchain infrastructures, for example, IoTeX. We enhance blockchains on scalability. For example, computation. With our technology, we are able to execute times-fold more computation that in general you can execute directly on blockchains. We, with our OS, bringing the OS to the blockchain, we are also allowed a great freedom of choices of program languages. And not only that, you're leveraging, in fact, a whole operating system to handle your software, which is nowadays something unforeseeable. We don't have, for example, a file system when the developer wants to encode a smart contract. There's no file system, something that is very common on the mainstream software development. And that is a key to unlock the real capabilities and potentials for the blockchain technologies. Not only that, the Cartesi ecosystem as a whole also helps to scale storage with our future Noether sidechain, which is coming over the next year, to scale also storage facility on and data availability, which is another huge challenge for blockchains. Well, we are doing is bridging the gap between the blockchain's infrastructures and these mainstream developers that are basically, to have an idea, we have maybe 500,000 of Solidity and blockchain developers with more than 20 million developers in the world eager to join this blockchain revolution, but mostly stopping on the friction to enter in this new reality because of new program language or difficulties to understand new architectures. And Cartesi offering a home, offering the OS, them an OS that is Linux, which by the way is used by more than 95% of the machines in the world, offer to this whole blue ocean of developers a safe, easy, and inviting way to join the blockchain space. And doing that together with IoTeX, the opportunities are unlimited. So we're going to see that soon on our use case that we prepare. Well, and why that is so powerful is basically you're now able to deploy your code, your solution, your smart contracts using normal, regular program languages that you use on a daily programming days. So for example, C++, Python for machine learning, or for AI, Visual Basic, database management, file system, or even leveraging existing libraries that are already in place to fast track your code development. And of course, we put in a layer of privacy on top of that, because you can start using cryptographic keys to code and protect the data that you're handling in our layer in order to provide and preserve this data ownership that Larry is mentioning so rightful. Well, how we do that is more than explain how it's a complication mechanism between our layer and how we preserve the same security guarantees that the blockchains offers. This is done by people. In the end, it's all about people, and we are really proud of the team that we have at Cartesi. The core team is an extraordinary and experienced team of developers and scientists that with backgrounds and from the most distinguished universities in the world, from Princeton, US to ETH Zurich. And as well, we are proud of having more than 40 engineers and specialists in our team. It's a heavy tech-based, sophisticated team, and of course supported by brilliant advisors that we help us to bring our technology to the next level. Well, Larry, I think now we could start talking about Cartesi and IoTeX, and I'm really excited to start unfolding the next slides with our community. Basically, what IoTeX it's allowing the world to have is bringing from Internet of Things to Internet of Trust things, and that is an important change on the mindset of people, because having a blockchain layer doesn't guarantee that the data that you input in this blockchain is valid, is true, and is accurate. So having a whole ecosystem that guarantees end-to-end verification, it's something that's a game-changing and allows all the things that Larry mentioned on his presentation about proofs of everything that is a little bit different from the proofs that the consensus mechanism the blockchain had, those consensus mechanisms to guarantee that the data that is inside the blockchain is stable, cannot be changed, and is protected. But nothing guarantees that this data that is being inserted in the blockchain is valid or has the right ownership. And having those other mechanisms on top is guaranteed this end-to-end verification, which is extraordinary. So, well, how Cartesi is helping IoTeX on this move? We are augmenting the capacity of IoTeX to access data signatures from any source because we have Linux. So any types of digital signatures you can easily accept with Linux. Your file comes in a 7-zip format, no problem. We do unzip inside our Linux virtual machine that is fully decentralized, check the data signature and start working on that data with a higher complexity of computation and sophistication of a program language. So you can use, for example, a sophisticated Python code to do a very nice analysis on your data set, regression, a fit on a curve, or clustering, or anything that, for example, a very robust and powerful machine learning algorithm will do. And the result of that is fully verifiable and is written in a way that can be written on the blockchain. So the Cartesi combination of the IoTeX will bring that extra layer of augmentation that will allow literally IoTeX handle any types of files, any types of program language, much more sophistication on the solutions that you can handle, and everything fully verifiable from the very beginning of the data source, with data being signed, digitally signed, and we know the ownership of that data until the computation that being executing those files. They also are fully verifiable and protected by the security guarantees of the blockchain from IoTeX until, of course, the record of these results on the blockchain for future usage. So it's this combination of technologies that is bringing to the next level what can be done in IoT world. Well, Larry, before we go into the examples, maybe we could shoot your presentation and see some diagrams that you prepare. Sounds good?
Yes, absolutely.
Let me stop share here. Let me give you the 1 second more. Make host. Yeah, you're on the drive seat.
Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, so this is just a high-level preview of some of the high-level concepts of what IoTeX and Cartesi can do. I'm going to share with you guys a little bit more about this design space that we're looking at. So can you see my screen fine? Should I go full screen on this? Okay, hopefully this is fine. Okay, cool. So yeah, Cartesi and IoTeX is where real world data meets blockchain, right? So just to share a little bit about the goal of this Ideathon, right? We call it the If-This-Then-That Ideathon. It's using tamper-proof hardware and tamper-proof software, and we'll give you the opportunity to come up with use cases where real world data from Pebble Tracker, as well as Cartesi's off-chain computing environment, will enable different types of if-this-then-that use cases, where you can ultimately reward users for completing actions in the real world. So it's really bringing things that we do in the real world to the blockchain space in a fully Web3 manner. Before we even get started with that, I wanted to share that all the Ideathon participants will receive an exclusive NFT that celebrates Cartesi and IoTex's partnership. And this isn't even the moving version. It's going to be a GIF with a really cool animation on it. So not only will the participants get an NFT, but the winners will get a special one as well. And we'll go through the process about how we select winners in the future. But it's important to think about, as Bruno mentioned, right? Cartesi is kind of a blockchain agnostic layer 2 or even layer 3 service that all blockchains can use, but especially with IoTeX, we have a very unique form of verifiable data from the real world. And when you combine it with verifiable compute, it's a very, very powerful concept. So I just want to break down how we think about designing use cases with these two pieces of technology, right? Just to recap a little bit, Pebble Tracker, the reason why this data is verifiable is because Pebble Tracker is equipped with what's called a secure element, similar to the ones used in your smartphones to do your Face ID and your fingerprints, and also in your Ledger hardware wallets to protect your private keys. On your credit card, that little chip on it is a piece of secure hardware. And these are basically hardware-based security chips that will protect the data and allow you to use it under your own control, right? So Pebble Tracker not only has all of these very rich sensors that do GPS, climate, motion, and light, but as the data is captured, the Pebble Tracker will sign this real world data for authenticity and ownership. And it also makes it verifiable to others, right? You can prove to other people that this data set came from this device, which has a blockchain identity and is owned by this person, right? So all the data is verifiable and open. And that makes, that's the first ingredient in this use case, is we need to have data that other people can trust. If we can't prove that this data is factual to others, it's just like, using a bad price feed in Chainlink and all the downstream impacts of what a bad price feed can do. And the same thing for any other type of data when we think about non-DeFi use cases, right? So the ability to collect, sign, transmit, process, and visualize, this is a core service of what IoTeX brings to the blockchain space. From the verifiable compute perspective, Cartesi provides, as Bruno just outlined, right, a Linux-based blockchain agnostic operating system for intensive computations that are verifiable to the blockchain, right? So it's almost like an outsourced and verifiable computing engine that blockchains can use. And the best part is you don't have to write these scripts in Solidity. It could be Java, it could be Python, complete generality for developers, consensus about the computation is reached on chain and can be proven to the blockchain. And that's where the verifiable piece comes in, right? Just like the verifiable data, if I cannot prove to someone else that this data was generated in a trustworthy way, or it's real, then everything downstream is impacted. Same thing for Cartesi, right? If we cannot prove to others that this computation was performed in a secure environment and is factual, then that means that it can't be used downstream either. So the combination of verifiable data and verifiable off-chain compute is extremely, extremely powerful. And these are kind of two of the ingredients that are very important, right? Just to dive into the data piece a little bit more, right? This is really important for people to understand about what data is useful for, right? A lot of people ask us, okay, if I own my data, that means I can sell it, right? Well, yes, you can sell it, but that's just one use case of data. In the near term, we think that data is more useful as a proof generator rather than being listed on a data marketplace and sold outright, right? And understanding what we mean really requires you to break this down from data to insights to actions that could be tied to those insights, right? So as I mentioned, Pebble Tracker has these 4 sensors, GPS, environment, motion, and light, right? The raw data that would come out from your device looks, just like a snapshot of data, right? The GPS location is represented in coordinates, right? Longitude, latitude. All these different environmental and climate metrics are represented in terms of percentages for humidity, degrees Celsius or degrees Fahrenheit for temperature, air pressure, and voltaic compounds for air quality, right? Parts per million. Even for things like motion, right? These are represented in degrees per second of rotation for angular velocity. And for acceleration, it's meters per second squared, right? Brings you back to the high school days when we were doing basic physics with these. But this is basically how motion is represented in raw data form. And then finally, even for things like light, right? Depending on how intense the light that a pebble tracker will capture, it's represented in a term called lux, right? But it's very important to know that just because we have these raw data units or data, it doesn't mean anything, right? If we have our raw GPS coordinates and it says, hey, I'm at this longitude and this latitude, blockchains are stupid until you make them smart, right? They need the context to know, okay, yes, you are at this location, but they need to know more about the entire world. Like, what is the map? Where are the points of interest that are relative, right? And these are where the insights based on your raw data are going to be very important, especially for things like GPS location, right? If we have our raw GPS location, we can calculate insights such as how close are we to another person or place? What is the total distance and route that we've traveled along our trip? Are we inside or outside of a specific geofence or a state or a city, right? Without the context about the world, just having raw GPS coordinates will not do anything, right? And this is where the very intensive calculations and analytics can be performed within Cartesi to extract these insights, right? Maybe for some very basic insights calculations, you can run these things in smart contracts that are Solidity based. But once you start to get into very high intensive computations, such as incorporating artificial intelligence or machine learning algorithms, it becomes impossible from a scalability standpoint to run these things on general smart contracts. And also from a cost perspective, it doesn't really make sense, right? So Cartesi is really expanding the types of insights we can use within our use cases here, even for things like humidity and temperature, right? A lot of the binary things is, is it above or below a certain threshold, right? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Is it too dry? Is it too moist? But more detailed insights such as how dry or moist, how hot or cold relative to other data points, how high or low is the elevation. If you wanted to say, if you're above the elevation of Denver, then trigger some type of reaction. But if you don't know, if the blockchain doesn't know the elevation of Denver, you cannot make this comparing and contrasting analysis. For motion, there's a lot of things you can tell. If the angular velocity and acceleration spikes up, that probably means maybe the asset is dropped, right? Or the orientation of the asset is upright or not upright. All of these things are insights you can gather from the raw data. And finally, for light, it can tell you things like if a package has been opened or unopened, whether too much or too little light has been exposed to these light sensitive objects, right? And this is really where this slide was written outside of the context of Cartesi. We could just imagine all the different insights that you can even choose multiple metrics to do, right? You can write your own scripts that are very custom that incorporate both temperature and GPS and motion and light together, right? So once we have these insights, and we'll cover this a little bit more with Bruno, who can share a little bit more about what types of calculations can be performed. This is where the actions can be tied to the insights, right? Using the verifiable insights, we can apply if this, then that logic to design really, really interesting use cases, right? Where the action itself can be something like trigger a payment to be sent, or it could be trigger a workflow to be created, or it could be mint an NFT, settle a payment, send a notification, right? This is also where the action, resulting action of the insight is very open-ended and can be expressed in a lot of different ways in a smart contract, right? So it's important to understand, again, that this raw data is not the full story. We have to extract value and intelligence from this raw data to make it truly useful for more complex use cases. Yeah, Bruno, I'm not sure if there's something you wanted to add to this slide, but I think this is an important.
I think it's fantastic, Larry. And as you said correctly, data itself has very low aggregate value or value added. When you process this data and start taking actions, that is the value added that you put in your data, and that starting to have value. And with the blockchain, technology that allows not only the big companies to extract value from internet and from data, but regular users and companies, and connect the whole stakeholders in a much more harmonious way as being done on Web 2.0. Just an add on top of the technology point of view, with our new generation of our technology, we'll be able as well to not only computate doing a simple calculation, revert result back, but we can execute the whole logic of a smart contract that would be in layer 1 directly in layer 2, which will make even more flexible the possibilities of what they are bringing into this programmability. And the sky's the limit. In my presentation, I got 3 use cases, but it's with this data, this table that is showing here, and mixing things here, literally anything that you can mix could be used. And you can compare that with existing database, doing sophistication calculations, doing any language program that you want, using libraries that, for example, you can get Python with tons of machine learning libraries available in the market, implement a very sophisticated and robust solution for tracking position, mixing that with acceleration, for example, to see if a driver is exceeding the speed limited, and you can prove where, when, and what he was doing end to end by the origin of the data, which is signed by the data processing that is fully verifiable and protected by the blockchain, and it's auditable. It's legally proof. So the options and opportunities are endless here. That's why I'm so excited with our partnership.
Likewise. Just to add a little bit more color, this is really a high level view of what this design space we're talking about looks like, right? And it incorporates many different components, which is kind of labeled onto this graph, right? A big part of it, as you can see, is to generate the if statement in a verifiable way. And this is where the verifiable data and the verifiable compute come into play, right? The that statement, or then statement rather, this could be very expressive and open, right? But it's really, if we think about the role of IoTeX and Cartesi as infrastructure providers, if we make it very easy for people to calculate or to generate these if statements, then the role of the DApp builder is then to just take these if statements and create then statements, meaning for every input, there's a deterministic output. And this will be the design space for these real world blockchain DApps, right? But just to cover the different components, we have IoTeX, we have Chainlink or other Oracle providers, we have code that could be very expressive, we have Cartesi, and then we finally have these DApps. So I'm going to walk you through step by step what this really, what each of these components does in this use case, right? So as we mentioned, IoTeX is really a source for this information from the real world in a real-time perspective, right? So real-time data from the real world is captured using IoTeX hardware. This is ingredient number 1, okay? The next ingredient, as we mentioned, without something to compare and contrast this user-owned and real-time data to, then the blockchain doesn't have enough context in order to use it effectively, right? So reference data or public data sets are sourced using Oracle services like Chainlink. A really good example of this would be if I had temperature data from my Pebble tracker and I wanted to create a farm insurance or a weather insurance use case, then I can know the temperature of my Pebble tracker, but if I don't know what the 10-year average temperature of my region is, then we can never settle this farm insurance contract on chain, right? If the contract says, if at any time the temperature is 1 standard deviation below the 10-year historical average, then provide an insurance premium or insurance payout, right? We need both the real-time information that would be used to settle it, and we need the historical benchmark. And Oracle services like Chainlink already do this, right? You can grab data from these historical databases through API calls, The difference between IoTex's Oracle network and what Chainlink has is, rather than pulling from historical databases, we're pulling directly from machines in real time, right? So the nature of this data is different, but when combined, it really provides the context that a smart contract needs or a blockchain needs in order to determine the if part and then the resulting action, right? So that's the first part, is getting the data that we need in order to generate this insight that we're looking for, right? So if we have real-time data, we have historical data, what else do we need? We need some kind of script to cross-reference these data together, perform analytics on it. So, just going back to the example that I mentioned, a script could be, compare and contrast, is this data point actually one standard deviation below the historical average? And within Cartesi, think about these as the ingredients, right? Sugar, spice, and everything nice. 1, 2, and 3. You have real-time data, you have historical data, and you have code. All of that is placed into Cartesi's off-chain compute environment. You can think about it almost like an oven, right? It's taking these ingredients and it is generating this insight. So the data and code are uploaded into Cartesi's off-chain compute environment, where analytics are performed in order to generate these insights, right? And the most important piece is that the insights that are created in Cartesi can then be used in not only a single DApp, but this can be like an insight that can be used across many DApps, right? It's a one-to-many. This insight can be meaningful for a lot of different DApps, which a DApp is just a set of incentives between a set of stakeholders, right? So the insights from Cartesi, based on the real world data from IoTeX, the historical data from an Oracle service like Chainlink, and whatever code is used to cross-reference them, are then used to trigger predefined actions in a smart contract. So this is the general high-level framework for the if this, then that, right? Just to give you an example of what it looks like for something like healthcare, right? If I am grabbing my healthcare data or my wellness data from an IoTeX powered wearable, then I own this data, right? I can use it to opt in and submit this data to get certain benefits, right? But again, if I just give my raw health data to the blockchain, then it's not going to know what to do with it, right? But what if we had a public data set of healthcare data from one or more big data sources? It could be a hospital network, it could be a BigQuery Google database, it could be a combination of all those different databases together, right? And the reason why we want this is the insight we're trying to gather is, how healthy am I compared to my peers, right? And if you have a smart contract that says, if you are within the top 10% of healthy people in a certain network, then I'm going to issue you some type of rewards, right? Call it live to earn, health to earn, proof of health, whatever you want to call it, right? If we want to enable these use cases that are fascinating, then we need to be able to cross-reference how healthy I am based on the data that I own and I can verify to others, and also public data, right? So this AI algorithm that's written in Python can be something that you already use in the traditional world, right? And you can just upload that into Cartesi's off-chain environments, where again, the data and code are used to determine what percentile of healthiness you actually are, right? And using this insight to say, hey, you today or for the past month, you are in the top 10% of healthy people amongst your peers, right? Then a DApp can take that insight to say, if you are healthier than your peers, then I'm going to pay you some tokens that represent, you can use these to schedule telehealth calls with the doctor, or, this insight about you being top 10% of healthiness amongst your peers, maybe that can use to be used to lower your insurance rates. Or maybe, if you are unhealthy, you're the bottom 25% of your peers, then people can use this information to make you offers or give you discounts about products that would make you more healthy, right? So again, the if part, once we know how healthy you are relative to your peers and the blockchain can ingest this information, then any number of responses can be generated, even crazy ones, right? You can get a NFT that says, hey, for this week, you're in the top 10% of your peers. And or it could be something very serious like insurance rates, right? Even for something like your GPS information, right? This is another very, very interesting category where I honestly think Cartesi and IoTeX have the biggest opportunity to do things in the GPS kind of space, where the real-time data can be your vehicle's real-time GPS location from a Pebble tracker, right? The public data set can be an entire map, right? Google, for example, Google BigQuery has this data set called OpenStreetMap, and it's what powers Google Maps today. Imagine if we had all the information about what restaurants you're close to, what points of interest you're close to, the distance between these things, all those queries that you punch into Google Maps. Imagine having that level of insight, but on chain. And that's exactly what Cartesi can provide us, is if you have another, call this one a Java algorithm, right? A JavaScript AI ML algorithm that can cross-reference your real-time location against public maps to say, hey, you're within 5 miles of the closest Tesla charging station, or hey, you're closer to a CVS than a Walgreens pharmacy, right? These are all insights that can be used to trigger any number of actions, right? So again, data and code are uploaded to this off-chain environment in order to determine where you are relative to other things in the world. And then dApps can trigger workflows, settle payments, and much more based on your GPS location, right? So when we think about location of assets, it could be a person, it could be a dog, it could be a package, it could be a vehicle, it could be a container ship sailing across the ocean. GPS is such a rich metric that I would love to see a lot of people submit use cases related to GPS information, not only within things like supply chain, right? If you're able to know, hey, I'm within 5 miles of the destination through a combination of my real-time GPS coordinates and an understanding that, from a public data set that the warehouse is at this GPS location, you can start to calculate the routes, the minimum routes or the most environmentally friendly route, and basically even incentivize people to take certain actions that they wouldn't before, right? In the insurance example, if you have all of the information about how you drive, right? Whether you, your real-time speed cross-referenced against a map of all of the freeways and their speed limits, that can calculate how good of a driver you are, right? So many different possibilities that we can think about, but this is the general framework for all of it, right? Yeah, Bruno, I'm not sure if you wanted to add in something here, or maybe you wanted to show.
Yeah, you're right. And as I said, with our new infrastructure, you can do even more than only computation, certain specifically parts, but implement the whole logic over there, including, for example, downloading a whole set of maps to use as a trigger point to compare with your verifiable data that is being generated by Pebble, for example.
Mhm.
It's actually, I'm doing a spoiling here because it's one of the examples I prepare, but it's rich, and I do agree with you. GPS, it's an amazing use case, nature use case for a lot of different triggering points, and that can connect other economies, and those economies will exchange automatically value. And that's the biggest thing on the blockchain, is that allowed value to be exchanged through automatic and decentralized decision making, excluding any central authority to verify and say that this can be done or this cannot be done. That is replaced by verifiable logic, computational logic, that can be fully verified through the blockchain, the authenticity, and then of course the results can be enforced. It's a fantastic revolution indeed.
Especially with GPS, right? Like I'm thinking a lot about, people that drive every day know that there's a lot of toll booths you have to go through, or different types of city infrastructure that your vehicle will need to communicate with in the future, right? So exactly. Where you are in the world, it's going to be one input, right? The other inputs are maybe it's your your license plate number or information about your personal self. And, all of these can be associated with your blockchain identity to say, if I am at the border of California and Arizona, and there's a toll booth there, and I provide my credentials, I provide my real-time location, then all of this can be authorized and settled on a blockchain instead of having to go through traditional Web2 infrastructure, right?
Possibilities are endless. Possibilities are endless. We can spend the whole night here thinking. For example, you can increase the score on insurance for a truck driver if this truck driver is driving only in paved roads, and you can fully verify that if you only cross paved roads by the months with the data set you're getting, because you have the maps to compare, you have the live data fully verifiable and authentic, and you have a logic that can do all these calculations and generate outputs on score. So yeah, the possibilities are endless.
Absolutely. And I think the great starting point to think about this wide scope of use cases is to just start almost backwards, right? We've been talking a lot about all the different ingredients that need to create some if-then statement, right? So if you are a good driver, then I'm going to reward you. That's an if-then statement right there, right? And thinking backwards from that if-then statement to see, okay, what data do I need to prove that if part, and what type of business logic do I need to write in order to create that then part, right? You're going to start to realize the then part is very simple. You just have to have the inputs to deterministically generate the output. But how you determine if someone is a good driver, sometimes that's even subjective, right? Your insurance company can tell you you're a good driver because you didn't get into an accident. But maybe throughout the entire year, you're driving 120 miles per hour and people are scared to go near you. That's why you didn't get in an accident. It doesn't mean you're a good driver, right? But this is where the data points really come into play, right? If you're a good driver, maybe that means you've never gone over the speed limit, and that's something you can grab from a Pebble tracker. It also means you've always had your seatbelt on, and that could be from the infotainment system from your vehicle. It also means that you've gotten your gas, your engine checked, or your gas changed, or oil changed every 6 months. And that can be something associated with your personal profile. So depending on what you need to prove the if part, you're going to need different data sources. Some of them are going to come directly from machines that you own, and you also own the information from those machines. Some of them are going to be public data sets where you need to compare and contrast how good you are against some type of public data set, right? So yeah, that's how I would approach these use case ideas.
Yeah, and the beauty of our partnership on that, on both projects, that we take care of the most difficult part for our community. So we guarantee to have a reliable and verifiable data set being generated. We provide to the community an environment that they can use any program language and at any capacity to fulfill the ideas. So we unlock and remove all the roadblocks for them to focus on pure creativity and what they could come with an idea to implement a game-changing use case involved with our both infrastructure. So that's the beauty of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I see potential. Yeah.
Yeah, some very high level examples of what this looks like, right? A lot of these are going to look like service level agreements because they are, right? If you're talking about a single metric, right, and you want to know, hey, if I ship some vaccines, you can create a use case where, if you ship it below 10 degrees Celsius, then you're going to get double payment. If you ship it at normal temperatures, you're going to get normal payment. And if you ship it above freezing, then you're going to lose your deposit, right? These are all kind of if-then statements nested together. These are 3 if-then statements, right? If the temperature is below 10 degrees, then pay double. If it's this, then pay that. If it's this, then pay that, right? So this is the very, very, very basic if-then statement that you can create. It's grabbing a single metric. This one doesn't really require too many, any analysis at all, right? But this is something you can definitely even create. Once we get into kind of multiple metrics, this is kind of giving yourself like a calculating like a proprietary score, right? So in this example here, we have the car rental company, and they their if-then statement is, if you don't treat my car like crap, then I'm going to give you a discount, right? So it's incentivizing the users of this rental car company to treat their car better, and using granular data as the if part, right? So things that are completely coming from Pebble trackers, you know, if you don't drive out of state, then I'm going to consider you to be a good customer. If you don't smoke in my vehicle, and I can tell that based on the air quality sensor from Pebble Tracker, then you're a better driver, right? If you don't go off road, meaning the motion sensor isn't going crazy because you're doing donuts based on the gyroscope, that means you're doing better, right? And you can also have other custom terms that can even be qualitative in nature, right? But ultimately, this if-then statement has a lot of different inputs, and, you know, determining if you're out of state or not. Yes, again, you have the raw GPS coordinates, but you need to know what the world's map looks like, or rather the blockchain needs to know what the world's map looks like, right? Whether you smoked or not, the air quality, you know, there's probably some analytics that need to be run on this, and also to determine your driving patterns. You know, you can plug in your GPS and your motion data into an AI algorithm that can tell you exactly how well you're treating this car, right? And ultimately, the then statement is, do I give them a 20% off rebate for treating my car very well? Or do I pay predefined terms for individual penalties, right? Maybe you're not going to see this in something like Hertz, but as more peer-to-peer car sharing services come out, how do you actually know, if you rent your car to a stranger, how they're treating this, right? So tamper-proof hardware and tamper-proof software can make these engagements much more trustworthy.
And Larry, an interesting thing here is the results of those analyses, they are immediate executed without any third party involved, which reduce overheads of business development, etc. And on top of that, some of these ideas can be multiple purpose idea, like for example, this one can also feed at certain capacity the second-hand vehicle marketplaces to make sure that I'm receiving vehicles that has a very nice historical, I would say, preservation rate, and I'm sure that I have a high likelihood to buy a good vehicle. Not only the miles that the vehicle has been run, but in which kind of roads, if the owner was really pressing the brakes a lot of the times, or driving aggressively, that reduced the lifetime of the vehicle, and if they were smoking or bad treating the car inside, and other customs, I'll say, metrics that could feed up a marketplace for second-hand cars, and create a priority or a premium price on those second hands. You know, it's very common. You have a history of a friend that got a second-hand car, and he was screwed because 1 month after the car was destroyed, it was with some serious problem, and he couldn't spot, you know, at the time of purchase. So yeah, possibilities are endless.
Yeah, one thing I also wanted to add to this before we dive into the instructions about how you guys can submit your use cases. I see some questions in the chat regarding that. We'll get to that in just 1 second. But another extremely important thing that I get questions about this all the time is, like, if we're talking about this healthcare use case, for example, health data is something that everybody wants to own, but nobody can analyze themselves, right? Unless you're a doctor. So the importance of extracting insights from your health data, but also keeping that health data private and secure is very, very important. And this is another thing that Cartesi and IoTeX both believe is very, very important, is this concept of zero knowledge proofs, or privacy preserving computations, right? The ability for us to take these inputs, whether it's real-time data or historical data or code, calculate a proof using that, and proving that to the blockchain without exposing the sensitive raw data. It's a privacy preserving computation, right? For those that are familiar with ZK, a lot of people are using this to order transactions and scale the blockchain. But the concept of a zero knowledge proof in this context is very important for this if part, right? If I can prove something about myself without needing to give up that raw data in order to prove it to other people, that just opens up this design space even more to say, now we can use data that's sensitive with the assurance that it's not leaked, but it's still giving us the benefit as if we're verifying the raw data to other people, right? It's really the proof that we're verifying rather than the raw data.
Absolutely. And Larry, maybe before we go to the templates and how to apply, I also have a few use cases to show the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me make you the host again. Yeah, and for anyone that has some questions, I see some good discussion going on in the chat. You know, please feel free to drop any questions. You know, we can even stay on a little after this this discussion. And I know everyone's muted for good reason, but we can unmute people if you guys want to have some general office hours with me and Bruno. We'll also have some office hours later this week for you guys to come up with some ideas. But Bruno, please take it.
Let me slideshow. So loading here. So the first one is on sustainable. Now on the following the car examples of GPS, we can have let me see here the trusted trips, which is the verifiable geofence. So for example, the IoTeX device will generate a report of a GPS real-time data and digitally signed to Cartesi. Cartesi, and the Cartesi layer, you have, for example, a preloaded US map loaded with all roads, and then what you can do is execute some analysis and calculations and understand which part of the region this vehicle is allowed to go. And if it, and following the Larry point of view on if then do this strategy, if cross some conditions or some locations, you could implement some logic to be triggered, or pay a fine, or receive a ticket, or receive a warning, or go into a kind of a reputational score on reliability of the driver. The possibilities are limited, no? And all those things can generate as being an output and recorded in the blockchain, or being fitted up to other logics that will kick on and generate, I would say, results. No?
Yeah.
The other one is
use case example.
Go ahead.
Is like
Go ahead.
there was someone actually built a pilot on IoTeX before. It was called HyperAware, and they thought of from a problem statement perspective, right? They're based in London. And those that know London know that the downtown area of London is called a congestion zone, where if you drive a vehicle through that, you have to pay money, right? But the way that they do this is when you enter the congestion zone, they take a picture of your license plate. And when you leave the congestion zone, they'll take a picture of your license plate and then calculate that delta, right? So HyperAware was a pilot that used Pebble Tracker as a verifiable location tracker to say, if at any time you are in the congestion zone, then charge a toll, right? That's the if-then statement, right? But the if part requires a lot of knowledge. First, it requires your real-time GPS location. It also has an understanding of what this geofenced area is. It could be the London congestion zone. It could be a freeway that's a toll road. It could be any of these kind of things. So it's basically taking the raw map data and then adding a topology on top of it. You know, the topology could also be a flood zone or things that aren't marked with city or country borders. There's a lot of other things you can overlay on a map. So great context for the GPS related use cases.
Yeah. So and another one is, of course, weather insurance, as you said correctly, no? And you can cross-reference the data being generated by position in real time with a 10 years weather information preloaded on Cartesi machine, where you can do some linear regression and calculate standard deviations on top of that, doing more sophisticated, I would say, Python implementation that would trigger a payment of insurance, or a warning signal, or even prediction of probability of having disruption of supply chain on, for example, crops, that could trigger more sophisticated DeFi mechanisms that are using a trading synthetic futures on corn, for example. So all those things can be automatically done, and the people around, the stakeholders around, automatic reward in this spinning wheel of value. That's the beauty of the blockchain. And going a little bit faster, because I think we should jump to the templates. Another interesting example is sustainability. If the IoTeX device is in a stove that is being replaced in a kind of a non-sustainable stove, and we want to calculate how much carbon credits it's being generated by this replacement, you can send all this information collected by on the stove, digitally signed to Cartesi. Cartesi will do all the calculations to understand the amount of CO2 that's being saved, and then issue a certificate that can be recorded on the blockchain for future actions. And this can be 100% verifiable, 100% fully auditable, 100% the samples of the stoves can do that for 100% of the time, in contrast that what is being done on the credit market nowadays, that the valuation is based on auditings with people going to the locations, getting few samples of the massive amount of stoves that are in Africa, for example, and then issuing a certificate based on an expectation that the average consumption of hours of cooking is that. This one will be the most accurate way, because it's actually generating the measurements of how the stoves has been used, when it started, when it stopped, how I calculate the credits, and so on. So it's really interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that is the three interesting use case that I was sharing. I think we can go back to the templates. It's time to give to our community the guidance on how to participate on Ideathon. Let me back to you. One second.
I see some great chat going on too. Jin, you make a great point that this is a whole new type of rewarding system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to extrapolate on that a little bit, right? Like, everything to do with blockchain is a two-sided marketplace. Like, going back to these things that people already understand, right? Like these consensus mechanisms, validators and users, and the protocol. This is a marketplace in itself, right? All these dApps have someone or something that is incentivizing someone else to do something that they wouldn't necessarily want to do, right? Take validators, for example. No one's running servers on the weekend for fun, right? They are doing it because they're being incentivized to do it by the protocol, right? That is already at layer one. This is already a two-sided marketplace, right? But then when you start to think about all these use cases that we're talking about already, right? Insurance, right? If someone wants to incentivize you to drive better or to be healthier, you can wrap a token economy around that to say, if you prove to me that you have done these things, which I define as steps to be healthier or drive better, then I'm going to give you a token, right? A token doesn't always have to mean money. Also, a token can represent governance, it can represent status, it can represent money, or it can represent all of the above, right? And this is really the design space that we're talking about. It's like, how do you create transparent incentives for people to change their behavior in ways that are beneficial to them or beneficial to society, right? Carbon credits is an incredible use case where if you can incentivize society to be more conscious of where they throw their trash, or what types of energy they use, or how efficient their buildings are operating, or what type of vehicles they decide to sell, electric versus gas, right? All of these are incentives. And the best way to describe it is like all taxes in general are incentive structures, right? It's the government incentivizing you to do things to get these tax credits and tax breaks. So think about it like this when we think about dApps and incentives. There's always two sides of the marketplace, right? Someone's incentivizing someone else to do something and using the token as the exchange of value. So with all of that context, what we want to give you the challenge to do is, just want to recap that all the participants will get a Ideathon NFT, and we have some very special prizes for the winners. But I'm going to go through the process about how you can participate in our Ideathon. So you're going to have the chance to create your own if this then that Web3 use case that utilizes the power of Cartesi and IoTeX technology together, right? This match made in heaven type of tech stack. So just to overview, we're running this during Dutch Blockchain Week. Really big thank you to the organizers of Dutch Blockchain Week for letting us do this. So you're only going to have a few days to create this Ideathon submission. So by Thursday at 10 a.m. CEST, we're going to ask you guys to submit your use case idea. Another thing we really wanted to do is not have judges decide the winners. We want to hear what is the most compelling use case to the community. So we're going to be holding community voting for about a day, just about more than a day, from Thursday to Friday. So community voting is going to start at noon CEST. We're going to be announcing the top 25 use cases for the community to vote on. And the winners will be announced this Friday, December 10th at 2 p.m. CEST. There's going to be a panel of judges from Cartesi, IoTeX, and Dutch Blockchain Week that will take everyone's submissions and filter it down to the 25 favorites and just do the review cycle. That's just one day. We want to give community something more targeted to look at, right? So you're going to be reading 25 if-then statements and deciding which one you think is your favorite, right? So the community will select the top 5 winners. And as I mentioned, all the participants will receive a participant NFT, and 5 winners that will be voted by the community will receive even more exclusive winner NFT and some other awesome prizes, including UCAMs and Pebble trackers, and probably some monetary prizes. So participating is very simple, right? We're going to share a link to a form. And basically all you have to do is fill out this slide, right? It comes with 5 things you have to fill out, or maybe 5 or 6, right? One is a title for your use case, right? So if you're talking about carbon credits, you're talking about healthcare, you're talking about these kind of things. We originally planned for this Ideathon to be centered around Pebble tracker data. We highly recommend you do that. But if you have a great idea that's outside of the scope of Pebble tracker, by all means, go for it and let us know that use case, right?
And Larry, our community can share more than one idea. Don't be limited to one idea only. You can share, if you have more than one brilliant idea, shoot us, and we'll be more than happy to put on community vote.
Exactly. So give your idea a title, write down your name on the slide, and focus on this one, right? This is what people are going to read first, is your if-then statement, right? And working backwards is also the best idea for this one, I think. Pick something you're passionate about, right? Figure out, like, if we were to solve this problem in a Web3 peer-to-peer fashion, what does this two-sided marketplace look like, right? Who is incentivizing who to do what? And your if-then statement will come naturally from that thought process. We would love to see a visual graphic that makes it more eye-catching to people that view your slide. Remember, this is a community vote. There's more simple and more compelling you can make it with the visual and a great if-then statement. But of course, we want to hear some of the details too, right? What problem does your idea solve? Don't take too much time, too much words to do it, but just focus on the so what, right? What would happen if we had this if-then logic? What results could we expect to see? And using the presentation kind of guidance that Bruno and I gave you, summarize the data and the analytics that would be required to enable this IFTTT use case, right? Hey, I need public maps data, and I need understanding of geofenced locations for that toll booth kind of payment use case, or I need all of the health data related to people aged 30 to 40 years old if I want to do a healthcare analysis use case, or hey, I need the information about the electrical grid if I'm trying to do a comparing, contrasting energy efficiency type of use case to make sure people use less energy or something like this, right? So yeah, this is the high level template that everyone is going to be submitting. So it's easier for us to also aggregate all of these and throw them into a slide deck. We're going to be ordering them based on the time of submission. So if you have an idea that's selected to be part of the top 25, the faster you submit your idea, the further up it will be in the deck. And that's just, it's not necessarily going to win you more votes. Maybe people that read the last slide will have it more fresh in their head, but it's just something fair for how we order the slides in the deck. And all of this information can be found on, I might as well just share this form that we've created. Give me 1 second. We'll be emailing out this form to everyone later on. But this is the Google form that you'll just fill out, right? So we've uploaded that slide template to Google. All the information you'll see here, and we're gonna have a link to this entire presentation, as well as the slides that we shared. We're gonna list them here so you can go back to them if you wanted to circle back on any of the insights we shared. And all you have to do is click on this Google Doc, create a copy of the slide template, and make sure you're logged into a Google account. Then go to File, make a copy, and copy the entire presentation, which is one slide, as you can see here. All you have to do is go here, go to File, and make a copy. It's loading very slowly, but you guys get the general idea, right? Just got to make a copy of that slide template and name it Ideathon - your name. And in this form, just so we can stay organized, we're going to ask for your email, your name, and then we're going to ask you to provide a link of your completed slide. So once you fill out that slide with all the information, make it look great, then you can basically go back to this slide. You can press share, make sure that you're sharing with anyone on the internet can view, and just copy this link and copy paste it right here. And that is how you participate into the Ideathon. And yeah, there's some extra guidance to make sure that, we can view this, make sure to share it with anyone with the link. And finally, if you want to have the Ideathon NFT, drop us your IoTeX address here. And that is how you participate, guys. So, we'll be doing the things behind the scenes to compile all of the slides together, and we'll share it on Friday along with the voted winners. So that's the overall structure of the Ideathon. Yeah, we love to see your creativity run wild. There's no such thing as a stupid use case. And even things that you have a lot of context in, we would love to hear those kind of stories as well, right? If you work in construction and you deal with a problem all the time that you think can be solved using verifiable data and using verifiable compute and using this Web3 design space, we would love to hear it, right? But even, the biggest problems in the world, if it means something to you, there's a lot of unlimited kind of use cases that you could be submitting. So really excited to hear what you guys submit. And the last thing is on Wednesday, we'll be hosting office hours. If you guys have any ideas that you're just trying to get over the hump, we'll be shooting out some more information about some office hours that we'll be doing on Wednesday. But yeah, I hope this presentation was interesting for everyone and inspiring. And yeah, that's kind of it. Bruno, any other words?
I think was a great session. Pleasure to run this initiative together with you, Larry, and the guys over at IoTeX. I think we have a very nice mix of technology that can really contribute the space and help on bringing very innovative and distinguished solutions. And I'm really curious and eager to to see what our community will bring in terms of ideas, and excited for the week ahead.
Absolutely. I do see some interesting chat in the chat here. There's some interesting stuff you guys should think about when it comes to machines, right? Fingerprint scanners are machines, right? That's a sensor. You know what else is also a sensor is a video camera, which is a very advanced light sensor, right? Anything that converts physical phenomena into digital data can be used within this design space as a proof generator, right? Like we were talking about very nitty-gritty sensors here like GPS and temperature and humidity, but there's a lot of devices out there calculate soil moisture, blood alcohol content, any wearable device that measures your blood glucose, or you know, even yeah, just trying to think. There's so many types of machines out there that are gathering all types of data. It's just exciting. We're finally bringing all of this data to the blockchain in a way that's verifiable and computable with IoTeX and Cartesi. So don't limit yourself to the devices that we've shared today. Anything can be a source for blockchain in the future is what we're trying to say. So yeah, awesome. Well, with that, we're gonna sign off for today, right on time, 1.5 hours. So yeah, really thank you guys for joining. We'll post this online.
And regarding to the office hours in the Eventbrite, we're gonna share those office hours to the community, so they will keep it updated.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is the Ideathon, guys. This is supposed to be the precursor to our full hackathon, where we see some of the things actually built with the full Cartesi IoTeX tech stack. So keep that in mind. I'm sure there's a lot of devs on this call right now. We would love to see you build these real ideas out in the future with PebbleTrack and Cartesi. So have a good rest of the week. It was a pleasure to share this information, and we'll share much more very soon.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for everybody to join and for the great chat and great session.
Awesome. See you guys.